Welcome to this special podcast, sponsored by Murphy Business Sales Edison, New Jersey office, where your business aspirations meet expert guidance. Whether you're looking to sell your business or explore new acquisition opportunities, we are here to support you every step of the way. Join us as our hosts deep dive into small business topics which are relevant for buyers, sellers, and other transaction advisors in the ecosystem.
You know, we all kind of assume that when a restaurant closes, it's because the food was bad. But today, we're going to prove that's it's almost never the case.
Right. The bitter reality for anyone in the food industry is that a closure is rarely a culinary failure. It's almost always a strategy collapse built on some really harsh, unforgiving math.
And those math problems are, they're complex. You've got massive overhead. You've got intense competition.
And razor-thin margins that can just vanish the second inflation ticks up. We are diving deep into that economic reality today.
So our mission for you is simple. We're going to analyze the failure of a specific North Jersey venue, Bacarosa, and use that really painful story to contrast it with some surprising and highly successful strategies from other places.
We want to pull out some clear, actionable principles on how you can survive the immense pressure of the food world.
We've pulled together articles detailing this closure, capturing the local community's perspective, and we've balanced that with sources on some really successful operational pivots.
Yeah, you're about to get the shortcut to understanding why passion just isn't enough, why strategy. Strategy is survival.
Okay, let's start with the hard lesson. We are unpacking the case study in crisis, the fall of Bacarosa, which was operating out of Nutley, New Jersey. They announced their final service was December 2025.
And the reason the ownership gave was, pretty straightforward, but also kind of vague. They just said it was the economics of this industry.
Right, that phrase, the economics of this industry, it feels like a catch-all for everything.
It often is, but when you dig into the specifics of what happened with Bacarosa, those generic financial pressures, they crystallize into 4 key warning signs, signs that any new operator should recognize instantly.
So what was the first and maybe the most confusing signal?
It was a debilitating identity crisis. I mean, it was driven by these rapid, really confusing rebrands.
Yeah.
This single venue it went through. It cycled through 3 separate concepts in a dizzying timeline. We're talking all within about a year.
Wow.
It started as the Franklin Steakhouse, then it briefly became the Hudson Rose, which was a new American concept, before relaunching again as Bacarosa, an Italian restaurant.
3 identities in 12 months. I mean, that just sounds like a catastrophic waste of capital, just changing the signs and printing menus.
Oh, it is. It's absolute capital depletion. But, more importantly, it prevents any single concept from gaining that crucial, loyal following it needs.
You're constantly starting from zero.
Exactly. Constantly starting from zero. No one can root for a place they see as that unstable.
And their final concept, this upscale Italian idea, that led them directly into the second problem, didn't it?
It did. Market saturation. The Nutley and North Jersey area is already a powerhouse for incredible Italian dining. So the consistent feedback from the community was that Bacarosa was just another Italian spot in a town that was already saturated with excellent options. They didn't really offer a compelling reason to choose them.
So they failed to stand out in a really competitive niche.
Exactly. And that failure was magnified by the third point, which loops right back to their stated reason for closing. The sheer financial pressure.
Yeah.
And this was caused by the building itself.
The architecture.
Yeah. This location, it inherited a massive footprint from the old steakhouse concept. So maintaining that huge space, the rent, the utilities, insurance, it demanded just vast amounts of revenue to break even.
Before you even pay for food or a single employee?
Precisely. So the concept upscale Italian, it was forced to fight the physical demands of a space designed for a much higher volume, higher average check business. The building was dictating the budget, not the concept they chose.
Wow, that's the core lesson right there.
It is. The fixed costs for that large venue, combined with just general rising inflation, made any kind of short-term profitability nearly impossible. They had to achieve massive scale immediately, and the rapid rebrands made that scale just unattainable.
And the final point, I mean, it might sound a little dramatic, but it really matters for local businesses. Location turnover.
It really does. The specific site, 238 Franklin Avenue, it's seen multiple businesses close. So locals, they start to view the address itself as challenging, maybe even
Cursed.
Yeah. Which, regardless of if it's real, it creates an immediate uphill battle for the new tenant. It just highlights that your concept has to organically fit the location's history. You can't fight the ghost of closure's past.
It's so easy to just focus on Bacarosa, but when we step back, their challenges aren't unique at all. They fall into three classic buckets every operator faces.
Right. So let's synthesize these specific failures into the three major systemic hurdles facing the U.S. restaurant industry.
Let's do.
We group these into operational, financial, and market challenges. So starting with operational, this is where inconsistency and internal chaos just creep in. Bacarosa's rapid pivoting made consistency both in service and in the kitchen nearly impossible. And staffing and retention are killers here. High turnover is so expensive, right? You're constantly retraining, and it just poisons service quality.
And that puts relentless pressure on the back of house.
That's kitchen efficiency. Managing your food costs, your cost of goods sold, and minimizing waste is critical. In a high inflation environment, if you're not tracking every scrap, those little operational inefficiencies will rapidly just eat away your profit margin.
And the financial hurdles were what ultimately sank Bacarosa because of that massive overhead.
Right, those high fixed costs, the non-negotiable rent, utilities, insurance, they demand high revenue just to stay afloat. When you layer in the capital depletion from multiple rebrands,
The money's just gone.
the money's gone. Those financial reserves you need for the tough times are gone. And critically, rising labor costs create this massive squeeze. Wages are rising, as they should, but margins aren't keeping pace.
And finally, the market challenges, where Bacarosa just failed to carve out any kind of unique identity.
That's the essence of brand differentiation. They open another Italian spot in an established Italian town. When you fail to stand out, you're forced to compete purely on price, which is just a race to the bottom.
And you have to think about the customer response to that instability.
It leads to consumer fatigue. When the concept changes so frequently, customer trust just erodes. People stop being invested in your success. You go from being a hopeful new spot to just being seen as unreliable.
Okay, that gives us a crystal clear picture of the economics of failure. But this is where the conversation gets critical. If Bacarosa is the case study in what not to do, what did the industry survivors do differently? Let's pivot now to the successful strategies.
We can start with financial management, particularly tackling the issue of transparency and cost control. The traditional model, it keeps the books locked up tight, but that's not what happened at Mei in Boston.
Right. Mei's owner, Irene Lee, she faced that same problem of painfully thin margins. What was the mechanism she used to survive without just jacking up menu prices?
She implemented something called open book management, or OBM. This sounds intimidating, but the idea is powerful. She shared the restaurant's full profit and loss statements, the P&L, directly with her entire staff.
The whole staff, even the kitchen porters and servers.
Everyone. And I imagine the initial reaction might have been skepticism, or even distrust of seeing the raw numbers.
Yeah, how does she overcome that cultural hurdle?
She approached it as education, not accusation. She trained every single staff member on exactly how waste, efficiency, and profits were all related. She basically turned them into financial partners.
So they suddenly had skin in the game.
Exactly. And the genius of this approach was that they proactively started to identify and cut waste everywhere, from produce spoilage to inventory management. The result was a significant drop in their cost of goods sold and, get this, a quadrupling of the net operating profit.
Wow. All driven by internal accountability, not just raising prices. That's brilliant. Now, let's look at labor costs. Dirt Candy in New York City took a completely different, a very controversial path.
Chef Amanda Cohen, she famously addressed the volatility of labor by eliminating tipping entirely. And she moved to a higher fixed salary and wage model. This is so controversial because tipping is it's so culturally ingrained in the U.S. But tipping creates financial instability for staff and high turnover for the business.
So wait, why would eliminating a huge variable cost for the customer, the tip, why would that actually save the restaurant money in the long run?
Because the cost of replacing staff is massive. You've got recruitment, onboarding, training, and the loss of quality during that whole transition. By providing financial stability through a guaranteed higher wage, Dirt Candy drastically reduced the hidden cost of turnover.
So the stability meant they kept their best people.
Exactly. They retained highly skilled staff, maintained high service standards, and avoided the constant financial drain of recruitment and retraining. That higher wage basically paid for itself in reduced churn.
Okay, so moving from the financial battlefield to operational efficiency. Chaos and scheduling, staffing gaps. That's what kills consistency, especially during a pivot. How did coat and tie an independent business, used tech to solve that?
They adopted mobile-based workforce management technology. Look, the critical bottleneck in high-turnover industries is quickly filling an empty shift. Managers usually waste hours texting or calling.
Or they just run short-staffed, which tanks service quality.
Precisely. And that leads right back to consumer fatigue and financial pressure. Their system, it functioned like a virtual trade board, and it allowed staff to instantly pick up shifts without any management intervention. The tech just reduced the friction in the operation.
Now let's talk about Bacarosa's core physical problem, that huge, high fixed cost building. How do you survive when the building itself is demanding too much money?
You don't commit to the building yet. This is where we have to look at Pecking House in New York. Chef Eric Huang faced the pandemic head-on by pivoting to a ghost kitchen model. They focus purely on delivery-only fried chicken.
So they just bypass the immense capital risk of a dining room entirely.
And that's the fundamental lesson here, the one that Bacarosa desperately needed. You test the product with low operational overhead first. Pecking House achieved financial security and built a cult following based purely on the quality of their product.
Before they ever committed to a brick-and-mortar spot.
Exactly. They proved demand and profitability on the lowest possible fixed cost structure. Bacarosa did the exact opposite. They committed to the highest possible fixed cost structure and then tried to figure out the concept.
That is the perfect, clearest counterpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, finally, let's look at market differentiation. The final nail in Bacarosa's coffin. They just became another Italian spot.
Right. But differentiation doesn't always have to mean a permanent change. Look at Canellis in Seattle, a true fine dining institution. During its pandemic identity crisis, it executed these highly distinct but crucially explicitly temporary pivots.
What, like a bagel shop, a burger drive-thru?
A bagel shop, a burger drive-thru, a meal kit service, all of it.
Wait a second. Isn't temporarily becoming a bagel shop exactly what Bacarosa was doing by changing concepts? What's the difference there? Isn't that still just identity confusion?
That is the critical distinction. Bacarosa's changes were permanent rebrands. They were removing the old concept and replacing it with a new, confusing one that just felt desperate.
Yeah.
Canellis' pivots were strategic, temporary events. They were very explicit that they were still a fine dining establishment, but they were adapting to the moment. They used those unique pivots to stay top of mind and generate media buzz, all without confusing customers about their core long-term identity.
So it's about communication and confidence, not just what's on the menu.
Absolutely. And for a simple way to differentiate in a saturated market, just think about Jersey Mike's. I mean, they're competing in the sandwich wars against giants like Subway. They're selling a commodity.
But they marketed the process.
Yes. Their differentiation is a visible operational ritual. Fresh slicing. In a world where food prep often happens behind the scenes, marketing the specific act of preparation, slicing the meat right there in front of you, created a perception of higher quality, of authenticity, of freshness.
And that justifies a higher price point.
It justifies a higher price point than competitors who pre-slice their meats. It's a simple, powerful hook.
This is where we connect all the dots for you, the listener. These success stories, they offer a clear, alternate roadmap for how Bacarosa's challenges could have been navigated, starting with that identity failure.
Right. If the owners really insisted on entering the saturated Italian market in Nutley, they needed a compelling reason to exist. They needed a unique hook, like Jersey Mike's fresh slicing ritual, to stand out. And instead of that confusing, desperate American to Italian flip, they needed a clear, confident, Canellis-style launch.
And what about managing those crippling, high fixed costs that came with that huge venue?
They just succumbed to the financial pressure of that building. May showed that the answer isn't always just raising prices. Transparency, that open book management idea, it would have turned the staff into cost controllers, allowing them to manage overhead internally.
And what about that reputation of being a high turnover address, that location curse at 238 Franklin Avenue?
Given that known history, the strategy should have mirrored Pecking House's approach. Before they sank all that capital into an expensive Italian rebrand, they should have rigorously tested the concept.
Like with pop-ups or delivery.
Exactly. Low capital pop-ups, delivery-only models in a nearby area. They needed to prove that the demand for their specific Italian food was so strong it could overcome the challenges of that difficult venue.
And then stabilize the whole operation before the inevitable turnover hit.
Inconsistent service, high staff turnover. that could have been mitigated by labor innovation. They could have implemented a high retention model like Dirt Candy's fixed wage system, or used labor tech like Coat and Tie's scheduling platform to maintain stability and quality during those crucial tight margin early months.
So what does this all mean for you? Whether you're opening a food truck or launching a chain, the sources make it undeniably clear. The difference between failure and survival rests on 3 pillars: ruthless financial transparency, relentless operational efficiency, and a razor-sharp market identity. Passion is absolutely necessary to get you in the door, but strategy is the only guarantee of survival.
And this leaves us with one final provocative thought. The most dangerous time for a new restaurant concept isn't opening day, when the press is there and the food is hot. It's the first pivot when you realize the original plan isn't working. Bacarosa's closure wasn't just a failure of concept, it was a fundamental failure to test that concept properly before committing fully to a difficult, capital-intensive venue. You should explore how often the most successful, scalable restaurants start intentionally small or hidden ghost kitchens, food stalls, or pop-ups before they ever dare to sign the lease on a large, prominent location.
Thank you from all of us at Murphy Business Sales for taking the time to learn about this important topic. We look forward to working together to achieve your business aspirations. For more information or a complimentary consultation for sell-side services, visit us at murphybusiness.com/Edison and complete our Contact Us form.